Chapter 5. Taking the Long Way Back. As soon as I stepped on this road, I definitely remember feeling more positive. Having the street lights on was nice. Being audibly and physically away from the fire and explosions was also nice. I remember taking a minute to really collect myself. I still had the goods from the corner store in my hands. I remember thinking to myself how there was so little I could do for the store clerk. I told myself that when I woke up in the morning, I would write something nice about him online to memorialize how brave and polite he was. It was all I could do as a coping mechanism at the moment to not let the loss absorb me. In the shock and chaos, I had got this far without even realizing it. I would look really weird if anyone noticed. I unpacked all but one of my energy bars from the box. I opened the one I kept out and took a bite from it, and then put the remainder in one of my cargo pockets. I folded the energy bar box up flat and stuffed it in a back pocket. Then I put the water bladders in each of my remaining empty cargo pockets as I had planned for them, and remembered to take my gun belt and cinch it up even tighter to compensate for the weight. I knew my belt can handle the additional weight, no problem. As I finished chewing the first half of my energy bar, I tried to gently shake my energy drink because it's supposed to be shaken according to the instructions on the can. I didn't want to overdo it and create a mess and noise, so I thought of an alternative measure. I turned the can upside down and then right side up, and tried to swish it around a little bit and open it as quietly as possible. The air escaping made a mean hissing noise, like the can was mad at me for not shaking it so it could explode. I wondered to myself if the other methods of can opening would have been quieter. I took a sip of my beverage to make sure my palate was staying evened out between food and moisture. When it seemed appropriate, I slammed the other half of the energy bar into my mouth, began chewing, and started on my way. I tried to do all this before I could draw any attention to my strange behavior and situation. I started walking forward with confidence like I belonged there and shoved the energy bar wrapper in my pocket where I had stuffed the energy bar box. Out of my peripherals, I saw nothing moving either to my left or my right and went on my way. As I walked down the road, I was thinking to myself that I guess everyone was sleeping through the explosion, fire, and me standing there. Maybe when they didn't hear the sirens, they just assumed it wasn't an emergency. What was wrong with people? Whatever, who cares? So I went a block or two, sort of perpendicular to where my house would have been. Hoping to make another 90-degree turn in order to be parallel with my street, I checked block after block and on every single street. The lights are out into pitch black. Here's the weird thing. Not only are the street lights out, but I notice a concern about a block or two down. The street lights are out, and the porch lights are out, which makes absolutely no sense. I have traveled maybe 6 blocks now, sipping my energy drink as I go, heading towards an older industrial area, but I turn around to see if maybe it would be better to head back to the corner shop. Surely the gas company or someone would have headed out there by now, maybe to make sure no other gas lines got ruptured in the explosion? Shouldn't there be power companies out trying to fix the light situation also? Anyway, it doesn't matter because when I looked back about 2 blocks behind me, the lights were out. That meant there were 4 solid blocks of pitch black between any light and where the corner store was, or rather where it would have been. Rest in peace, Mr. Store Clerk. The inferno was still going at the gas station and wasn't providing light to where I was, since the fire was physically around a corner about half a block, several blocks back. Ahead I could see where there was an intersection and a road that would have then again put me parallel with my street, so that was a good sign. In case you were wondering, there was also enough light in this direction to get to the next intersection. I continue to sip on my energy drink as I make my journey, noting some ambient critter sounds as I pass what must have been a pond and or a stream. I have no idea what the creature may be, as I couldn't see anything past the light that the street lamps provided. I made it to the intersection and noticed there was a bus stop here and a garbage can. This would be a more reasonable place to actually take a few minutes to collect myself without drawing suspicion. I took the energy bar wrapper out of my pocket and crumpled it and set it in the garbage can with distinction since it was not recyclable. I noticed to myself that this garbage can was not overflowing and seemed pretty well kept. That was neat and made me happy. This was not one of the special garbage cans that had separate recycling receptacle, unfortunately. I distinctly remember having the idea to check the bus times and cross-referencing with my phone. Yes, the buses would have been running at that time, and no, the bus never came. I would have been there about 2 minutes before the bus was technically scheduled to arrive and stayed about 5 minutes later. On top of that, there hadn't been a single vehicle the entire night, besides the sirens I heard early and whatever hit the gas station. If you're wondering why I never called anyone, I didn't have anyone to call at the time. It wasn't really an emergency other than it was really dark. I checked the news while my phone was awake. The news wasn't updating, but that wasn't unusual because any news feeds used cell data and it took an eternity to update if they updated at all. There was only a single cell tower servicing this entire area, and it was not owned by my carrier, which meant service was additionally poor. Not only had real news slowed down, but it hadn't been covering very much that wasn't important lately. Also, news takes physical people to manually update. I took a sip of my energy drink, then checked Twitter, which I only have foreign people on, and as usual, they were up their own ass judging everyone else on narrow-minded political views that made no sense while ignoring their own colossal implosions. I took another sip from my energy drink, then checked Facebook after that for local happenings, but everyone was asleep, so there was no updates. I checked the time, and this being winter months, there was still around 6 hours of darkness left at least. I needed to keep moving to get home. The last thing I decided to check was the map application on my phone to make sure I was still on the right track to the house, even though I was sure I already was. Sure enough, taking a turn here was going to put me parallel, and then in around 8 blocks, then another few blocks, it was going to put me back at my subdivision again. Perfect. The cellular GPS didn't tell me this. I kept all of the maps loaded natively on my phone for circumstances such as these. Chapter 6. Back on track. I took a turn, leaving the bus stop, finally heading down a street parallel to my own again. I scanned back 90 degrees to where I had come to see that the lights were off no more than 2 blocks back. I took a second to register, but I noticed as I moved my head that there was a human-shaped shadow about 20 yards behind me. The shadow was moving at a moderate speed. It wasn't an intercepting pace, but quite deliberate. I locked my hearing in that direction to the shuffles on the concrete that are so clear to me now. To not get tunnel vision, I scanned the other direction 90 degrees, then back to see that both directions were nearly completely blacked out, including houses and street lamps. Thankfully, no new shadows. I matched my speed to match the new condition, and then exceeded it enough to put a comfortable distance between who had emerged behind me and then headed in my predetermined direction. As I was getting my speed appropriate, I narrowly missed another shadow forming out of the darkness off a grassy woods path. I had little time to assess, and then headed across the street where I knew it would certainly turn from forest to full industrial and hope I wasn't walking out of one issue and into another. I had obviously disturbed one of the indigenous homeless groups, which I didn't mean to. I didn't have a problem with them, but the way they simply sneak up without saying anything has always frustrated me. I hated feeling captive to them also, once they initiate, so I never felt the risk worth seeking audience when potential confrontation could be avoided. I made it about half a block before I realized I didn't hear the pair shuffles anymore and turned around to see nobody there. I looked around and figured they must have gone back to their shelter in solution for surviving this event. A part of me regretted not stopping to talk to them, but another part of me reminded me it was just as possible that they were off their meds. It could have been an ambush for all I knew. As I started walking down the road, I realized the rest of my energy drink had sloshed out in the brisk walk from the shadowy threats. As I checked to see how much of the liquid got on me, I lamented having to immediately leap to the conclusion that people approaching me must always have ill intent. I put the now empty energy drink can in my jacket pocket where it fit snugly. As my heartbeat slowed back down to my version of normal, I wish we all lived in a society where everything could simply be happy and safe, but then I realized it was completely impossible and completely out of our control. All we could control was ourselves, and that was the sad grim reality. Every step I took and every dilapidated and decrepit building I passed was more irrefutable evidence of the failure of that very idea. Not that I had all the answers. In fact, just like so many other people that think about this, we only communally know a lot of what's wrong, with no idea really how to make things right. All anyone knows is that the system needs to be rebuilt properly. But how do you get to the reboot? Simply standing back and letting the system fail seems horrible, but we've been cut out of the process for a long time. All we've been seemingly to be able to do is delay the inevitable. I think about it as I walk a block or so down, then I look behind me out of curiosity. I see that the block behind me to the corner block and all the adjacent blocks are in the dark. I continue my pace forward, not fully looking ahead, but looking to the sides of the buildings. I stop to think to myself in front of a building with a triangle with arrows pointing itself at all three angles. Then I think about the three roles of society, which are war, peace, and revolution.